All right, folks, welcome to this quick screencast on interest groups. Now, the entirety of this presentation is available on Schoology in the interest groups folder. My goal is to actually break it into smaller chunks that somewhat align with the reading. So in this particular screencast on interest groups, we'll talk about the history of interest groups and the roles that they perform currently in society. So let's move forward. So the definition of an interest group is an organization of individuals who share common political goals and are united for the purpose of influencing government decisions. Historically, you can think of interest groups as factions, which Madison talked about in Federalist Number 10. Now, a faction was a group of citizens united by a common passion or interest and opposed to the rights of others or the interests of the whole community. So there was that negative aspect of faction, right? And the way to mitigate the effects of faction was to have a large republic so that their interests would balance out and there'd be compromise, and the compromise would support the interests of the community as a whole. Now, most political scientists don't agree that interest groups are exactly the same as factions. They don't have the same negative aspect of it. So they really think that, an interest group can actually support the rights of others and also be aligned with the interests of the community as a whole. Okay, so the rise of interest groups, if we're looking historically, was strengthened by the progressive movement. So you think about the turn of the century, back when we had political machines and political bosses, when they were rampant across the country. And really, it was, if you wanted to have a role in government, you needed to make sure that the political machine was on your side, that the political boss endorsed your position in the party. Now, when we eliminated, or at least lessened, the impact of political machines and political bosses, we strengthened the involvement of interest groups, people organized around a particular interest or passion, with the goal of influencing government. This end was further emboldened with the New Deal. So you think Franklin Delano Roosevelt, right, and the growth of the federal government, that transition from dual federalism to cooperative federalism. And you're seeing government, especially at the national level, intermixing, setting the national goals and getting the states on board with achieving those national goals. Okay, and interest groups played a big role in influencing the development of cooperative federalism. So in a modern world, interest groups are everywhere in politics, at the national, state, and local levels. You could actually make a strong argument to think that the influence of interest groups is greatest at the state level, because the state level doesn't have the same resources as the national government. So the information that an interest group provides to government makes it more valuable at the state level than at the national level, though they do tend to influence both levels. And we primarily see this visible in campaign spending. Okay, so PACs, political action committees, those are the fundraising arms of interest groups, and they are allowed to donate money directly to a campaign. But with current court rulings like Citizens United, an interest group might also form a super PAC, and then they might just spend unlimited amounts of money on a candidate that they prefer. Now, they can't coordinate that spending if it's a super PAC, right? But it allows them to spend unlimited amounts of money. And you start asking the further question, the additional question, like where is the dark money coming from? It might very well be coming from an interest group that has organized itself as a 504c group, right? Okay. Which is when we don't know who has actually contributed to that particular group. All right, so the roles of interest groups, what roles do they actually play in society here? Okay, so the representation of members' views. That's the primary one. The power of an interest group is aligned with the amount of its membership, and they represent our views in government. So you think of them as a linkage institution that allows us to participate in our democracy. If you're drawing a connection to the pluralist theory of democracy, you're making the right connection. That when I can amplify my voice in government, my influence in government by joining an interest group that has the same interest, the same passion, the same policy goals as myself. And we can then educate policymakers So a lot of times we know that our representatives, our senators, it takes them a while to develop expertise. So who do they rely on? They rely on the experts from interest groups themselves. And we can give them information. We can actually conduct the studies and develop the expertise, and then lawmakers use us to develop good policy. And it's not just lawmakers that we're educating. So we're educating our own members, so our members themselves become experts in that area of interest, that passion that we share. We are also educating members of the executive branch, people that work for the bureaucracy, people that write the rules and regulations that, further define how a law is going to be executed. So we're working in both primarily with the legislative branch, but also with the executive branch on developing policy that aligns with our interests. We're building the agenda. So we're making sure that our issue is on the legislative agenda. We're developing developing relationships with the chairs of various committees and subcommittees, and we might even be donating money to their campaigns to make sure that our agenda is our issues always on the agenda. And then we provide alternatives. So you think about it like this. When a committee is holding hearings on a bill, they're going to bring in experts from competing interest groups to provide alternatives. Okay, what's the best way to address this particular issue? So when a committee holds hearing, they're bringing in experts from interest groups to provide information and expert information on that particular topic. And finally, it's the interest group itself that does the program monitoring. Now, we say that Congress, one of their primary checks over the executive branch is oversight, but do they really have the resources to conduct ongoing oversight? Whereas an interest group not only has the resources, but has the interest and the passion to always be conducting oversight, not just when the president is of the opposing political party. If I have an interest in environmental policy, I'm going to want to make sure that the laws that Congress has passed are always being executed faithfully, because that's my interest and passion. So a lot of times our members of Congress are relying on interest groups themselves to conduct the valuable oversight that is necessary to see that the laws are being enforced. And there you go. So that's the roles of interest groups. You can read about it in the textbook to further deepen your understanding, and there is a crash course video as well.